Hi all. I hope you guys have written answer to today's question. And as you guys know, our topic for today was polity from GS2. Again, I urge you all to make the best use of the time you have got right now and get all your answers evaluated on Collector Babu. Please do considering buying their evaluation plans, which will be much helpful for your mains preparation this year and even later as well. I have shared my screen. Let's not waste a lot of time and start discussing. We have three questions. Um, Two would be fairly difficult if you don't know a lot of case law. One in particular is very difficult to address. This was the second question was from this year's paper, which is about DNA test, etc. Okay, which is like relatively very difficult. The first question. The second, you might know because now on we have started reading a lot of relevant case laws, so this will become fairly easy. And the last about the role of vice president as the chairman of Rajya Sabha. We can do one thing. Let's begin from the easiest and then progress on to the toughest question or the bouncer question and how we would have addressed it. And also, more than how we would have addressed it, there are a few key takeaways which will be helpful in our pre or mains preparation. Let us take those key takeaways with us. So, the first question is maybe the third question is discuss the role of vice president as the chairman of the Rajya Sabha. It's a fairly simple question because it's literally just asking the key roles and responsibility of the chairman of Rajya Sabha. Okay, who is the vice president? You don't have to talk about the role of vice president as such, but the role of chairman of Rajya Sabha. Okay, so here you can just talk about Article 64, which says that Vice President shall be the ex officio chairman of Rajya Sabha. Okay? And you have to mention in this article. There are a few things which you can do. For example, to enhance your visibility that you have written a lot of articles and you know about what the roles or what the role of vice president would be, then you can just make a table and list down certain very important constitutional provisions. You can talk about Article 63, existence of the office of vice president. Article 64, ex officio chairman of Rajya Sabha. Article 89, the role of chairman and mention the presence of deputy chairman to assist in his absence. Okay, and Article 101, Article 101, the chairman has the right to preside over Rajya Sabha session but restricts the voting right. Okay, so even if you know one or two of the article, you can just make a box and write it. It will enhance the visibility and help you fetch a little more marks because we are literally just trying to snatch away those little marks that we need to make a name in the mains list and in turn in the final list. Okay, so ultimately to address the question roles and responsibility of the chairman of Rajya Sabha or the vice president as ex officio chairman of Rajya Sabha. So obviously here you will be talking about he's the presiding officer, she is the presiding officer, and has to ensure smooth and orderly conduct of business of the house, and then enforce the rules of procedure conduct of business in Rajya Sabha. Very simple. You can write maintaining order and decorum. Okay, this because this has been very much in news. It will be important for you for prelims perspective as well. Rule 255 and Rule 256. Okay, always remember this about suspension of member and asking a member to withdraw. You have to talk about these rules. Okay, maintaining order and decorum. Then impartial functioning. They has to maintain no bias towards any political party and ensure that the office is being discharged in a better way. Then you have to talk about casting vote, that yes, Article 100, even though you don't write article, it's fine because we have make a box to talk about the articles we know regarding this question. You'll talk about the chairman does not vote in ordinary instance but is a casting vote. Whatever will the roles and roles. Here you can just talk about referral of bills, or even constituting committee, okay, deciding the points of order. Even the important one clause here will be anti-defection. Under the 10th skill, the chairman of Rajya Sabha has to decide on the disqualification of Rajya Sabha members on the ground of defection. Okay, so we are done here. So what are we going to do more in this question? Well, obviously you can talk about limitations, you can talk about he has limited voting power, you can talk about there's too much dependence on rules and procedure, and there's this limited scope of discretion, which ordinarily would be a good thing. Then you can also talk about, yeah, there's this bias in the way the chairman has been behaving or whatever. Or you can just talk about some of the mm, few bad instances, or the few uh, you know instances that bring shame to the house that occurred during the chairmanship of the vice president. You can talk about how more than 100 plus MPs were suspended, many from Rajya Sabha, etc. You can just talk about some of those aspects. Okay, in the end, you can just conclude by saying the dual responsibility of being a constitutional authority and a legislative leader, okay? Because technically he is not a legislative leader, but obviously, house he chairs the house where the member of parliaments are seated, okay? Makes the chairman a key pillar of parliamentary democracy, okay? Just like speaker, he is a key pillar. Which is, here you just have to talk with case laws, okay? See, discuss the statement with the help of relevant case laws. Read the second part of the question, what is saying, what it's saying. It is not saying that you discuss the statement and then give certain case laws if you know as examples. No, you have to discuss the statement with relevant case laws with the help of. So, using the case laws, you have to expound upon the principles that have been established in terms of constitutionalization of environmental protection by Supreme Court. Okay. So let's try to brainstorm as to how we'll be addressing this question. Okay. So there'll be this first question, this first table. Sorry, let's first read the question. The most significant achievement of modern law in India is the constitutionalization of environmental problems by the Supreme Court. Discuss the statement with the help of relevant case laws. There will be very relevant articles here. Article 21 is one important article. You can talk about relaxation of locus standi. Okay, you can talk about how PIL have been initiated for uh, constitutionalizing the environmental problems and bringing environmental problems to the fore. So you can just say, by linking fundamental rights with environmental protection and sustainable development, Supreme Court ensured a holistic approach to safeguarding both human dignity and ecological well-being. Simple. You can use any other introduction here. You can just talk about certain principles like polluters pay principle or any other relevant principle here. It would be beneficial. Okay. Then landmark cases, environmental jurisprudence, and how they shaped. Okay, how they were shaped. Now you can just form a table and talk about it, or you can just write one and what was the benefit, two and what was the benefit. Okay, so here you can talk about Dehradun Coring case, rural litigation, and entitlement Kendra versus state of Uttar Pradesh. Obviously, you wouldn't know all these names, but yeah, Dehradun Coring case recognize the right to live in a healthy environment as part of Article 21. So, the environmental problems were constitutionalized through Article 21. It was given shape of the fundamental right. Okay. Quarrying activities were stopped to protect the environment. Then, obviously, the famous MC Mehta case. Many MC Mehta case, Ganga pollution case, air pollution case, Taj Mahal case. There have been many MC Mehta case, particularly four, I guess. So, MC Mehta versus Union of India affirmed the right to live in a pollution-free environment. Which articles were invoked? Article 21 and Article 48A. Okay. So, what else? Under Article 21, imposing stringent measures to curb water pollution in the Ganges. And P.A. Jacob versus Superintendent of Police Kottayam. Okay. Uh, See, this is also important because generally speaking, we just tend to restrict in terms of air and water pollution to some extent. soil pollution, but noise pollution is the aspect we rarely touch upon. Okay, but in this case, Supreme Court talked about how the use of loudspeaker does not constitute their freedom of expression. Okay, so it leads to pollution, it ensures noise pollution, and you cannot just say that that's your freedom of speech. So this is also a key legislation which would help us broaden our scope when we are talking about the range of pollution being covered by Supreme Court's jurisprudence. So, PA Jacob, the case name, try to note down most of the important case names which I have listed, because again, you will have to go and search on your own. So, it's better if you find it here. But again, it's free will, do whatever you wish. Held that let the freedom of speech and expression, Article 19(1)(a), does not include freedom to use loudspeakers, okay, ensuring noise pollution is regulated. So, talking about, so you can take example of a lot of like a lot of cases. Let's take this example, which is an important case. Vellore Citizens Welfare Forum versus Union of India. Here, two major principles were, you know, hailed upon. First was precautionary principle and polluters pay principle, ensuring sustainable development. Then T. Damodar Rao versus SO Municipal Corporation, right to life under Article 21 with environmental protection, holding that environmental degradation impacts life and liberty. So, like, these are some of the case laws you can, use 4 or 5 of them and it would suffice. Okay, and that's fine. But most importantly, Vellore Citizens Forum, you need to write, because two very important principles were hailed upon in this case. Then you have to talk about MC Mehta case, maybe two MC Mehta case you can take about Ganga pollution, about air pollution. Dehradun coring case, yes, you have to talk about, and also please talk about this PA Jacob versus Superintendent of Police case, okay? Because it adds a different dimension to our answer. Then what you can do? Then you can just bring in some international comparative context. It is not asked directly. If you wish, you can bring, just to fetch maybe half a marks extra if you have time. But it's always better to know a few things. Like, you can know about United States. Okay, the case name was Massachusetts versus Environmental Protection Agency, where it was recognized that EPA's authority to regulate greenhouse gas under Clean Air Act emphasized government's role in mitigating climate change. Okay, so EPA was empowered to do that, Environmental Protection Authority. Then you can take any other case. Okay, let's take the case of Germany. Climate protection ruling declared that insufficient climate action violates constitutional rights, including the right to a livable environment. So these are some of the international jurisprudence from which India can be influenced, from which Supreme Court can be influenced, and from which our environmental stewardship can be influenced. In the end, you can just conclude by either by using some of the principle like precautionary principle, polluters pay principle, or you can just make use of how the dilution of locus standi and the introduction of PIL under Article 32 and 226 further democratized the access of justice, and that became foundational to judicial intervention in the environmental matters. Okay, so this is clear. So there are a few case laws which you need to know, and that's it. And then you can talk about how you're going to approach this question. It's not a very difficult question, but obviously what is important here that you need to know some case law. Now, the first and the most difficult question, it was like a bouncer. I mean, a lot of us could not write this question well, including me, but here's an attempt because it's easier to be wise after the event. So, the right to privacy is intrinsic to life and personal liberty and is inherently protected under Article 21 of the Constitution. Explain. In this reference, discuss the law relating to DNA testing of child in womb to establish paternity. So the first question is fairly simple, talking about right to life and personal liberty under Article 21. I mean, this question has been asked again and again in prelims and mains, so it's not very difficult to answer. Talking about the case Puttaswamy judgment, recognizing right to privacy under Article 21. Simple introduction would suffice. Then you can talk about how it has been granted as a fundamental right, okay, and how this the series of case which led to the Puttaswamy judgment. You can talk about MP Sharma case, Kharak Singh case, okay, and how through a series of litigation and jurisprudence, it was hailed finally in the Puttaswamy judgment that okay, fine, privacy is inherent in Article 21. Okay. Okay, and then privacy does not merely mean privacy in limited sense. Obviously, it's not an absolute right, but privacy encompasses a range of rights from bodily integrity, informational privacy, personal autonomy, etc., and ensuring that there is freedom from undue state and third party interference. Then you will talk about international framework. If you want to, you can. If you don't, even then it's fine, because that is not the main crux of the question. Okay, obviously this is the third part which you need to write: judicial test for privacy infringement. Okay, legality. Okay, there has to be proportionality, and the aim that the states pursue should be a valid aim. Okay, and in the end, you can talk about implications on governance, like how the judgment led to invalidation of Article 66A of the IT Act, influenced the formulation of data protection laws, etc., and shaped debates around Aadhaar and state surveillance program. Okay. Now, the second part of the question, which is the tricky part, because generally people maybe of the law optional, they might know, but generally speaking we do not know unless it's in news, and obviously not all of us follow news regularly and in such a manner that we would know everything. So in this case, so the question that has been asked about DNA testing about of a child in womb to determine paternity. In this case, the law that is being asked is actually the Indian Evidence Act 1872, where it allows court to admit DNA test results as expert evidence in dispute related to paternity or inheritance. And from what I know and what I have asked around people, mm, asked with people around me, this is the only act which talks about that particular instance that the question is invoking. Obviously, you can write about some other things, like you can talk about PCPNDT, how DNA testing can be done for genetic disorder, but not for sex determination, etc. But that is not exactly the question. Obviously, you can make a table. That is what I have done here. Make a table talking about law governing DNA testing, but the Evidence Act has to be there. If it is not there, then I don't think the answer is meaningful enough. Obviously, that is what was asked. Then you can talk about what is the justification for DNA testing. Legal clarity. Obviously, it will ensure legal clarity, involve paternity dispute. And if you have some case law, you don't have, generally speaking, you won't have. So you can just leave it. Okay. You can know what that child has a right to know who his or her parents are. Okay, at least father in this case. And ensuring fair justice in the cases that would call for paternity fraud, adultery, or disputes relating to marital fidelity. But there are also concerns which are related to ethical concerns and privacy related concerns. Firstly, there should be mother's consent to this, because the child is still in the womb, and at the end of the day it should be mother's choice which makes her take informed decision regarding the paternity test, and that she should know about the pros and cons of the same. But also at the same time, you need to ensure that the privacy of data is there, and also there is not stigmatization of the mother in case or or victim shaming in cases which you can think of. So, paternity dispute may expose sensitive family matters leading to emotional harm and social ostracism. So, these are some of the concerns which need to be looked upon while forming any law. Well, there's a law, but in the way how court approaches such cases. And also, you can talk about judicial balancing. You might not know the case, it's fine. You can just talk about that there needs to be a balanced position, and how the dignity and privacy should be in maintained, and balanced with the necessity. Even only in cases where it is absolutely necessary should such be done. And then, while DNA test serves as a critical tool in legal dispute, they must be conducted with a robust ethical and legal framework to protect the dignity and autonomy and privacy of women. So, our discussion ends for GS2 polity. I'll meet you guys again on Monday. We'll discuss question on GS3 topic, and then the timeline has been shared to you. And happy writing. Make the best use of the time you have, and bye bye.